was 22 years old when this happened, working the graveyard shift at a 24/7 convenience store just outside town. It was mid-October, and I usually worked afternoon shifts, but that day I got a call around noon from my manager asking if I could cover for Jake, one of the night guys who'd called in sick. The shift was 10 at night to 6 in the morning, and since it counted as overtime, I agreed without thinking twice. I needed the money for rent anyway. The forecast said a massive storm was rolling in that evening, so I figured it would be dead quiet, and I'd just sit behind the counter watching movies on my phone. But I couldn't have been more wrong about how that night would go. I clocked in at 10 and took over from the evening manager, Sarah, who seemed relieved to leave before the rain got worse. She gave me the usual rundown, told me the register had been acting up but otherwise everything was fine, then grabbed her coat and left. I locked the door behind her and settled in behind the counter. The store was one of those typical places, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, 3 aisles of snacks and drinks, a coffee station that hadn't been cleaned in weeks, and big windows facing the parking lot. Rain started coming down around 10:30, light at first, then heavier. I had a few customers come in over the next hour, mostly people buying cigarettes or energy drinks, and they'd hurry back to their cars trying not to get soaked. By 11:30, the place was empty. Around 12:15 in the morning, a man walked in wearing a black raincoat, hood pulled up over his head. He looked to be in his early 40s maybe, average height, nothing particularly memorable about him except for how he moved. He didn't walk directly to any aisle or the counter. Instead, he just stood near the entrance, looking around slowly like he was taking inventory of the place. I called out the usual greeting. He turned to look at me, pulled his hood back slightly, and I could see his face clearly under the harsh lights. Clean-shaven, dark eyes, thin lips pressed together. He walked toward the counter but didn't pick up anything to buy. "You working alone tonight?" he asked. His voice was calm, almost friendly, but something about the question felt off. I nodded. "Yeah, just me until morning." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's rough. Stay safe out here." Then he turned and walked back out into the rain. I watched through the window as he got into a dark sedan parked near the side of the lot. Strange, I thought, but I shrugged it off. People asked weird questions sometimes. 30 minutes later, at 12:45, the same man came back inside. This time he walked straight to the cooler, grabbed a can of soda and brought it to the counter. I rang him up, he paid with exact change and left without saying a word. But when I glanced out the window, I saw his car was still parked in the same spot. He wasn't leaving. He just sat there in the driver's seat, and from what I could tell through the rain-streaked glass, he was looking directly at the store. At me. A knot formed in my stomach. I tried to tell myself he was just waiting for the rain to ease up, but it didn't make sense. Why come in twice and then just sit there? By 1:30 in the morning, the rain had got even worse. Wind rattled the windows, and the storm was loud enough that I could barely hear myself think. No other customers had come in, which wasn't surprising given the weather. I kept glancing at the monitors for the security cameras we had set up around the store. One showed the front parking lot, and I could still see his car sitting there, headlights off now, just a dark shape in the downpour. I couldn't tell if he was still inside it. My hands felt clammy. I pulled out my phone and called my manager. "Sarah, hey, sorry to bother you. There's this guy who came in twice and now he's just sitting in the parking lot. Should I call the cops or something?" She sighed on the other end, clearly half asleep. "Is he doing anything, like being aggressive or trying to get back in?" "No, he's just sitting there. He's probably waiting for the storm to pass. Don't worry about it unless he does something. Just keep the doors locked if you're nervous." I thanked her and hung up, but her answer didn't make me feel better. I decided to check the back of the store where we had a storage room and an emergency exit. I was sure I'd locked that door at the start of my shift. It was store policy. But when I walked back there and tested the handle, it pushed open easily. The door wasn't locked. My heart started pounding. I knew I'd locked it. I always did. Someone had opened it. I quickly turned the deadbolt and hurried back to the front counter. my eyes darting to every shadow in the store. At 2 in the morning, I was sitting on the stool behind the register, gripping my phone in one hand and keeping my eyes on both the parking lot and the security feed. The rain was deafening now, hammering against the roof. Then, without warning, the lights inside the store flickered. Once, twice. Then they went completely dark for about 10 seconds. Only the dim emergency lights near the exit stayed on, casting everything in a weak yellow glow. In those 10 seconds, I heard something. Footsteps. Wet, deliberate footsteps coming from the back of the store. My mouth went dry. The main lights came back on, harsh and bright, and I grabbed the wooden baseball bat we kept under the counter for situations like this. I also had my phone ready. I walked slowly toward the back, bat raised, my pulse thudding in my ears. I didn't see anyone. The aisles were empty. But near the back door on the tile floor there was a puddle of water, a fresh puddle like someone had just walked through. The door was still locked from the inside, just like I'd left it, but that water hadn't been there before. Someone had been inside. I ran back to the front counter and tried calling 911. The line connected, but the signal was weak because of the storm and it kept cutting out. I couldn't get through. Panic started creeping in. I looked out at the parking lot. The sedan was still there. At 2:30, I made the decision that I wasn't going to stay behind that counter anymore. If someone was in the store, I needed to be near the front door so I could run if I had to. I stood close to the entrance, bat in hand, watching the aisles. That's when I saw movement, a shadow shifting between the shelves near the back. Then he stepped out into the light, the man in the black raincoat. He was inside the store. He was holding something in his right hand, but I couldn't make out what it was because of the angle and the fluorescent glare. He looked directly at me, and there was no expression on his face. No anger, no aggression, just blank. He started walking toward me slowly, deliberately, like he had all the time in the world. "Don't come any closer," I shouted, my voice cracking. "I called the cops. They're on their way." He stopped about 15 feet away, tilted his head slightly like he was thinking about something, and then spoke. "I just want to talk." His voice was flat, emotionless, and that scared me more than if he'd yelled. I didn't wait. I shoved the front door open and ran out into the storm. Rain hit me like a wall, cold and blinding. I didn't have my raincoat. I didn't have anything except my phone in my pocket and the bat I'd dropped by the door. I just ran. I sprinted toward the main road, my sneakers splashing through puddles, my clothes soaked through in seconds. The rain was so heavy I could barely see 5 feet in front of me. I glanced back over my shoulder and saw him walking out of the store. He wasn't running. He was just walking, slow and steady, like he knew I couldn't get far, like he'd planned this. My chest burned as I pushed myself harder, aiming for the nearest house I knew of, maybe a 5-minute run down the road. But the storm made everything disorienting. It was pitch black except for the occasional flash of lightning. My foot caught on something, maybe a pothole or a rock, and I went down hard, slamming into a puddle. My phone flew out of my pocket and landed in the water. I grabbed it, tried to turn it on, but the screen stayed black. It was dead. I looked back. He was still coming, closer now, maybe 30 feet behind me. I scrambled to my feet and kept running, my knee throbbing, my lungs screaming. Then I saw headlights. A vehicle was coming down the road from the opposite direction, cutting through the rain. I ran toward it, waving my arms frantically, shouting as loud as I could. "Help, please help me." The truck slowed down and stopped. It was an old red pickup and the driver's side window rolled down. An older man, probably in his 60s, with a weathered face and a John Deere cap, leaned out. "What in the hell is going on, son?" he shouted over the rain. I could barely get the words out. "There's a man chasing me from the store back there. He was inside. Please, you have to help me." The old man's expression hardened. He looked past me down the road, but the man in the raincoat was gone. I spun around. There was no sign of him, just rain and darkness. "Get in the truck," the old man said. I didn't hesitate. I climbed into the passenger seat, dripping water all over his interior, shaking from cold and fear. He reached under his seat and pulled out a CB radio. "I'm calling the sheriff. You just sit tight." His voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice that made you feel like maybe things would be okay. He radioed in, gave them the location, said there was an emergency at the convenience store. Within 10 minutes, I saw the flashing red and blue lights coming up the road. Two patrol cars pulled into the store's parking lot, and the old man drove us back there to meet them. The officers searched the store top to bottom. They didn't find anyone inside, but they found plenty of evidence. The back door had been forced open, the lock jimmied with some kind of tool. There were wet shoe prints all through the aisles and near the counter. The security cameras had been shut off remotely. Someone had cut the power to them from the breaker in the back. And in the storage room, they found a hunting knife lying on the floor, a serious-looking blade with a black handle. That's what he'd been holding. The sedan in the parking lot was gone. No plates, no trace of who he was. The cops told me it looked like he'd been watching the store, maybe for days, learning the schedule, waiting for a night when someone would be alone. He'd planned the whole thing. They took me to the hospital to get checked out. I was fine physically, just some bruises from the fall and the start of a cold from being out in the rain. But I was shaken up pretty bad. I quit that job 2 days later. Didn't even go back to pick up my last paycheck. They mailed it to me. The old man who saved me, his name was Earl, and he owned a farm a few miles down the road. He'd been out checking on his cattle because of the storm and just happened to be driving home at the right time. I thanked him about 100 times. He just shrugged and said, "You take care of yourself, kid. World's got some bad folks in it." They never caught the man in the raincoat. I gave the police a description, but it wasn't much to go on. To this day, I still get uneasy when I hear heavy rain at night. It brings me right back to that store, those lights flickering, those footsteps in the dark. I don't work night shifts anymore. I don't think I ever will again. I was doing inventory around 11 at night when I first noticed the sky turning dark. I worked at this convenience store out in the industrial part of town, and honestly, most nights were pretty quiet. Just me, rows of snacks, and the occasional trucker stopping by for coffee. My coworker Jake was supposed to be there with me that night, but he called in sick about an hour into my shift. So there I was, alone, counting boxes of cigarettes behind the counter when the radio started crackling. The weather alert came through, warning about a severe storm moving into our area within the hour. I figured I should probably bring in the plastic chairs and the sandwich board sign we kept outside. As I walked toward the door, I glanced through the front windows and saw something that made me pause. There was someone standing near the streetlight about 50 feet away from the store. I looked closer and realized it was a woman wearing a black raincoat, just standing there perfectly still, facing the store. I stepped outside and the wind immediately hit me. It was picking up fast, and I could feel those first scattered drops of rain on my face. I grabbed one of the chairs and carried it inside, then went back for the second one. The whole time I was working, I had this weird feeling like someone was watching me. When I looked up again, the woman was still there in the exact same spot, not moving at all even though the rain was starting to come down harder now. I thought maybe she was waiting for a bus or something, but the bus stop was 2 blocks away, and it was past 11. No buses ran this late anyway. I brought the last chair in along with the sign, then locked the door behind me. I looked out one more time, and now the woman had turned completely to face the store directly. Something about it made my skin crawl, but I tried to shake it off and focus on getting through the rest of my shift. I pulled out my phone to check if Jake had texted, but there was no signal. The storm must have been interfering with the cell towers already. About 45 minutes later, the storm hit with full force. I had never seen weather like this before. The thunder was so loud it felt like it was shaking the entire building, and the rain was coming down so hard I could barely see 10 feet past the windows. Lightning flashed constantly, turning everything outside into these brief snapshots of white and shadow. I turned off most of the main lights and left just the emergency ones on, figuring it was safer that way. Then I headed to the back storage room where there were no windows. I sat on a stack of boxes, listening to the wind howling and the rain hammering against the metal roof. That is when I heard it. Through all the noise of the storm, I heard the bell above the front door chime. Someone had just walked into the store, but that did not make any sense. I had locked that door. I grabbed the baseball bat we kept under the register and slowly made my way back out to the main floor. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. When I turned the corner, I saw her. The woman in the black raincoat was standing in the middle of the store. Water was pouring off her coat and pooling on the floor around her boots. She had gotten inside somehow, even though I knew for a fact I had locked that door. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Excuse me, we are closed." "How did you get in?" She did not answer. She just stood there with her face hidden under the hood of her raincoat. I asked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Then slowly she reached up and pulled the hood back. Her face was pale, almost gray-looking, and her dark hair was soaked and plastered to her cheeks. She looked right at me and said, "I need to stay here." Her voice was strange. It was quiet, almost a whisper, but somehow I could hear every word perfectly even with the storm raging outside. I told her the store was closed and she could not be here. She shook her head. "I cannot go back out there." I asked what was wrong, if she needed me to call the police for her. The moment I said police, something changed in her eyes. They went from scared to alert, almost defensive. "No police," she said clearly. Then she started packing back and forth across the store, clutching this small purse tight against her chest. That is when I noticed her sleeve. There was blood on it. Not a lot, but enough to see. I asked if she was hurt, but she quickly pulled her arm behind her back and would not show me. I was starting to feel really uneasy now. I wanted to get to my phone at the register, but I would have to walk right past her to get there. I tried to stay calm. I asked her what her name was and what she needed. She did not answer, just kept packing and looking out the windows. Every time lightning flashed, she flinched. But I realized she was not looking at the storm. She was looking to see if anyone was out there. She was watching for someone. "Are you running from somebody?" I asked. She stopped walking and looked at me. "You would not understand," she said. Then she moved closer to the register, positioning herself between me and the phone. It was like she knew exactly what I was planning. "Please, just let me stay until the storm passes," she said. Her voice sounded almost desperate now. I did not know what to do. Part of me wanted to help her because she seemed genuinely terrified, but this whole situation felt wrong. Then there was a loud bang from the back of the store. Something had hit the rear door hard. We both turned toward the sound. The woman grabbed her purse with both hands and her whole body started shaking. "They found me," she whispered. "Who?" I demanded, but she did not answer. She just stared at the back door with pure terror in her eyes. The banging on the back door continued. It was rhythmic and forceful. This was not the wind. This was someone trying to get inside. I told her I was going to check it out, but she grabbed my arm. "Do not open it." Her grip was surprisingly strong. I could feel her nails digging into my skin. I pulled away. "You need to tell me what is going on." She backed up toward the front of the store, shaking her head frantically. The banging stopped. Both of us stood frozen, listening. All I could hear was the storm. 30 seconds passed, then a minute, nothing. I started to relax a little, thinking maybe it had just been debris blown against the door. But then the lights started flickering. Once, twice. Then they went completely out. We were plunged into total darkness except for the weak glow from the emergency backup light near the exit. In the darkness, I heard the woman whisper, "He is inside." My blood went cold. "Who is inside?" I asked quietly. Before she could answer, I heard footsteps coming from the storage area. Slow and deliberate. Someone was walking toward us through the dark store. The woman grabbed my hand and pulled me down behind the register counter. We crouched there, and I gripped the baseball bat so tight my knuckles hurt. The footsteps got closer, then stopped somewhere in the middle aisle. In the dim light, I could make out the silhouette of a tall man. He was holding something in his hand. It looked like it could be a knife or some kind of tool. "I know you are here," he said. His voice was deep and cold. The woman next to me was not breathing. The man started walking down the aisles, checking each one methodically. When he moved away from us, the woman leaned close and whispered right in my ear, "We need to run." Now, she pointed toward the front door. I shook my head. It was still locked and opening it would make noise, but she squeezed my hand hard. "It is our only chance." When the man turned down another aisle with his back to us, we crawled toward the door. My hands were shaking as I reached up for the lock. The click when it opened sounded impossibly loud in the quiet store. The man spun around. "There you are." He started running toward us. I shoved the door open and pulled the woman outside into the storm. The rain hit us like a wall. The wind was so strong I almost fell. We ran down the sidewalk and I could hear him behind us. My lungs were burning and the rain was blinding me, but I kept running. Then I saw them, red and blue lights cutting through the rain. A police car was coming down the street on patrol. We ran into the middle of the road, waving our arms. The police car stopped and we ran to it. The man who had been chasing us saw the cops and immediately turned and ran in the other direction. Two officers jumped out. One ran after him while the other stayed with us and got us into the back of the patrol car. He gave us blankets and turned the heat on. The woman was shaking violently. She started telling the officer everything. It turned out she was a victim of domestic violence, trying to escape from her ex-husband. He had been stalking her for days, and tonight he had chased her through the storm. She ran into my store because it was the only place with lights on. She had gotten in because the door had not latched properly in the wind. I thought I locked it, but the storm must have blown it open. About 20 minutes later, the other officers came back. They had caught the man trying to hide in an abandoned building 2 blocks away. He was arrested on the spot. The woman thanked me, crying, saying I had saved her life. The officers asked if I wanted to report any damages to the store, but everything was fine. They drove me home after the storm died down since my car was still at the store, and I was too shaken up to go back. On the way, I could not stop thinking about what had just happened. I realized that sometimes danger shows up when you least expect it, in the middle of a storm on what should have been just another boring night shift. And sometimes, just being there at the right moment can save someone's life. I never saw that woman again, but I heard later that she got a restraining order and moved to a different state to start over. As for me, I requested to never work alone on night shifts again. I worked the night shift at a 24/7 convenience store just outside the city limits. The place sits right off the highway, surrounded by empty fields and a few scattered trees. My name is Jake, and I have been doing this job for about 3 months now. The hours are 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and most nights I am here completely alone. The pay is decent enough, and honestly, it is usually pretty quiet. I do not mind the solitude. Tonight was a Friday, and when I showed up for my shift, the rain had just started. My manager Chris had left earlier that week for a vacation, which meant I would be handling everything solo for the next several days. I clocked in, checked the register, and settled into what I thought would be another ordinary night. The first couple of hours went by without much happening. I restocked some shelves, wiped down the counters, and made sure the coffee machine was full. A few customers came through. A truck driver stopped in around 11 and grabbed a large coffee and some beef jerky. He nodded at me, paid in cash, and left without saying much. Around 11:15, a young couple pulled up in a sedan and bought snacks and energy drinks. They were laughing about something and the girl kept checking her phone. They seemed happy. I rang them up, wished them a good night, and watched them drive off into the rain. By 11:30, the store was empty again. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming steadily against the windows. I could see the wet pavement glistening under the parking lot lights, but there were no cars passing by on the highway. It was just me, the hum of the refrigerators, and the sound of rain. I sat behind the counter, pulled out my phone, and ate a turkey sandwich I had brought from home. Everything felt normal, calm even. Around 12:15 a.m., the front door slid open and a man walked in. He looked to be in his mid-30s, wearing a black hoodie that was soaked through from the rain. His jeans were dark and wet, and he was not carrying an umbrella. Water dripped from his clothes onto the tile floor as he stepped inside. I glanced up and said, "Hey, how's it going?" He did not respond. He just walked past the counter and started moving slowly down one of the aisles. I watched him for a moment. He was not picking anything up, not really looking at the products. He just walked from one end of the aisle to the other, his head turning slightly as if he was scanning the store. After a minute, he moved to another aisle and did the same thing. I felt a small twinge of unease but pushed it aside. Maybe he was looking for something specific and could not find it. I called out, "Can I help you find anything?" He stopped, turned his head toward me and shook it once. No words. Then he walked over to the corner of the store near the exit and just stood there, staring out the glass doors at the rain. I kept my eyes on him. 5 minutes passed. He did not move, did not buy anything. Then, without a word, he turned and walked back out into the rain. I stood up and watched him through the window. He walked across the parking lot, but I did not see a car. No headlights, no engine starting. He just disappeared into the darkness beyond the lot. I checked the security monitor. The camera outside showed nothing but empty pavement and rain. That was strange. Where did he come from? Where did he go? I told myself he was probably just waiting for a ride or trying to get out of the rain for a minute. Still, something about him felt off. 20 minutes later, at 12:35 a.m., the door opened again. It was the same man. This time he walked straight to the refrigerated section, grabbed a bottle of water and brought it to the counter. I rang it up. $2.19, I said. He handed me a $5 bill. As I opened the register to get his change, he spoke for the first time. "You work here alone every night." His voice was low and flat. I felt my stomach tighten. I handed him his change and tried to sound casual. "Not always, depends on the schedule." He nodded slowly, his eyes lingering on me for a moment longer than felt comfortable. Then he took the water and walked toward the door. But instead of going out the front, he turned and headed toward the side of the building, near the hallway that led to the storage room and the back exit. I stepped out from behind the counter and moved closer to the window, trying to see where he went. The side of the building was not well lit, and the rain made it hard to see anything clearly. I did not see him walk out to the road. I went to the back door and checked it. Still locked. My heart was starting to beat faster now. I went back to the counter and pulled up the security cameras on the small monitor we kept under the register. I rewound the footage from the last few minutes. I watched him walk around the side of the building, and then he just vanished from view. The camera that covered that area was showing nothing but static and snow. It had been working fine earlier. I felt a chill run through me. It was just past 1 a.m. when I heard it, a sound from the storage room. At first, I thought maybe it was something falling or the wind pushing against the back door. But then I heard it again, a scraping noise like something being dragged across the concrete floor. I stood frozen behind the counter listening. The sound stopped, then started again. I grabbed my phone and tried calling Chris, but it went straight to voicemail. He was probably out of range, somewhere in the mountains with no service. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? That I heard a noise. That a weird customer came in twice. I felt stupid, but I also felt afraid. The rain pounded against the roof. No one else was coming into the store. I was completely alone. I looked at the storage room door. It was closed just like I had left it. But I knew something was wrong. I reached under the counter and pulled out the aluminum baseball bat we kept there for emergencies. My hands were shaking. I took a deep breath and walked slowly toward the storage room. The floor creaked under my feet. I stopped at the door and put my ear against it. Silence. I turned the handle and pushed the door open, flipping on the light switch. The storage room was packed with shelves, cardboard boxes stacked high, and rows of products waiting to be restocked. I stepped inside. "Hello, is someone in here?" My voice sounded weak. No answer. I moved deeper into the room, turning down one of the narrow aisles between the shelves. My phone was in my hand, the flashlight turned on, casting long shadows. I checked behind the first set of shelves. Nothing. Then the second, still nothing. Then I heard it, a metallic clang from the far corner of the room. I whipped around, shining my light toward the sound. For just a second, I saw a shadow move quickly behind the tallest shelf in the back. My heart slammed against my chest. Someone was in here. I started backing toward the door, my grip tightening on the bat. Then he stepped out, the man in the black hoodie. He was standing at the end of the aisle, blocking my path to the door. His face was clearer now under the fluorescent lights. His expression was cold, emotionless. He stared directly at me and said, "I told you that you should not work alone." Panic surged through me. I turned and ran the other way, deeper into the storage room, trying to find another way out. I heard his footsteps behind me, heavy and deliberate. I knocked over a stack of boxes, hoping it would slow him down. I could hear him pushing through them. I reached the back corner of the room and saw the emergency exit door. I slammed into it, pushing the bar, but it did not budge. It was locked from the outside. I spun around. He was getting closer. I ran back toward the main door, swinging the bat wildly in front of me. He ducked to the side and I bolted past him, stumbling into the main store. I sprinted toward the front entrance, but when I got there, the automatic doors did not open. I pushed against them. Nothing. He had done something to them. I heard him coming out of the storage room. I ran to the side exit, the one employees used. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I twisted the deadbolt, threw the door open, and ran out into the pouring rain. I did not look back. I just ran across the parking lot toward my car, parked at the far end. My shoes splashed through puddles and the rain soaked through my shirt in seconds. I reached my car, yanked the door open, jumped inside, and locked it. I looked back at the store. He was standing in the doorway of the side exit, just watching me. He was not running. He was not chasing me anymore. He just stood there, staring. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911. I sat in my car with the doors locked, my breath fogging up the windows, watching the store. The operator stayed on the line with me, asking questions, telling me help was on the way. My whole body was trembling. I kept my eyes on that side door, but the man did not move. He just stood there in the rain. After what felt like forever, I saw flashing red and blue lights coming down the highway. 2 police cruisers pulled into the parking lot. I got out of my car and met them halfway, telling them everything as quickly as I could. The man, the storage room, the doors. They told me to wait by their cars and then they went inside. I watched through the store windows as they searched. One officer went into the storage room with his flashlight drawn. The other checked the front area. They were inside for about 10 minutes. When they came back out, they were alone. The man was gone. One of the officers, a woman with short hair, walked over to me. We checked the whole building. No one is inside, but we found something. She led me around to the side of the building and pointed up at the security camera. The wire had been cut, cleanly, deliberately. He knew what he was doing, she said. He disabled the camera before he went in. This was not random. The other officer came over and said, "We will file a report, but without a good description or ID, it is going to be hard to track him down. Did you get a look at his face?" I described him as best I could, but I knew it was not enough. The officer nodded. "You are lucky you got out when you did. He clearly knew the layout of this place and had a plan. Do you have any idea why he would target you?" I shook my head. I had no idea. They asked me a few more questions, checked the locks on the doors, and told me I should not stay there alone. They recommended I call my manager and request backup for future shifts, or at least get better security. I agreed. I was not going to work another night shift alone. Not here, not anywhere. The police stayed until my manager Chris called me back an hour later. I explained everything to him over the phone and he told me to lock up and go home. He would come back early from his trip to handle things. I did not argue. I grabbed my stuff, locked the store, and left. As I drove away, I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see that man standing in the road behind me. But there was nothing, just rain and darkness. I made it home, locked every door and window, and sat on my couch with the lights on until the sun came up. I could not stop thinking about what the officer said. He had planned it. He knew the store. He knew I would be alone. That meant he had been watching me, maybe for days, waiting for the right moment. The thought made my skin crawl. I never went back to that job. A week later, I found work at a warehouse with a full security team and cameras everywhere. I will never work a night shift alone again. Looking back, I realize how close I came to something terrible. If I had not trusted my gut, if I had hesitated even a few seconds longer, I do not know what would have happened. The rain saved me in a way. It forced me to stay alert, to notice the things that did not feel right. And maybe that is the only reason I am here to tell this story.